I think anyone who is concerned about the state of the world today is suited for this kind of research. So if you're worried about the ease with which conflict breaks out nowadays, or if you're concerned about power abuses by powerful individuals or powerful countries, or if you're afraid of climate change and you wonder why countries aren't doing more to prevent it, if you're interested in any of these big questions, then I think international relations is the perfect research field for you. Hello and welcome to today's lecture, which I have chosen to call "Why is the world so chaotic nowadays?" And in today's lecture, I'll try to give one possible answer to that question. So if we look at the world today, you will notice that there's a lot of conflict and chaos going on. So just to give you a couple of examples, as you probably all know, one of the biggest problems, one of the biggest conflicts in today's world is, of course, Russia's war against Ukraine. Now, this war started in 2022, and it's still going on. We see no end in sight. And thus far, at least 400,000 people have been killed in this war, but we don't know the full extent of the damage and the casualties, so the number of dead people is probably much higher. It's a very brutal and terrible war. And also, there is, of course, Israel's war against Hamas in Gaza. So in 2023, Hamas launched a major terrorist attack on Israel from the Gaza Strip. And in response to this, Israel launched a war on Hamas in the Gaza Strip. And this war also started in 2023. It's been going on ever since. And the war has completely destroyed Gaza. Almost every building is destroyed. And at least 56,000 Palestinians have been killed by Israel so far. And here too, the number is probably much higher due to the fact that so many people lie under the rubble. So again, we don't know the extent of death, and we don't know the death numbers in total, but it is a very brutal war. And the civilians in Gaza have been paying a very heavy price. Then there is also the civil war in Sudan, which also started in 2023. Now, this is a war that has been getting very little media attention, but it's just as brutal and horrible as the other wars. This war broke out when two rivaling factions in the military started fighting against each other. So this war has so far claimed 150,000 lives, and as much as 12 million Sudanese people have been forced to flee from their homes. And in fact, because of this, the UN calls it the world's largest humanitarian crisis in the world. And then, just as we are recording this, there's a new war going on that started only a couple of days ago, and this is a war between Israel and Iran, started on June 12th this year, 2025. And since the start of this war, we have seen missile attacks both from Israel and from Iran every single day. And this has the potential to develop into a major, large-scale war in the Middle East. So as you can see, we are living through chaotic and violent times. The world is in an extremely chaotic state. And that provides the backdrop to what I want to talk about today. Why are all these conflicts happening at the same time? And this is, of course, a very difficult question. And there are many potential answers to this question. And in the field of international relations, there are many different theories that provide different answers to this question. Today, I want to introduce to you one specific theory which gives one possible answer to this question. And that theory is what's called hegemonic stability theory, or HST. And HST argues that the international system is most stable when there is one single powerful leading country in the world. And this country is often referred to as a hegemon. Now, a hegemon simply means a country that is economically, politically, and militarily more powerful than any other country in the world. And HST, or hegemonic stability theory, argues that the hegemon will use its power to prevent conflict from breaking out in the world. Now, I should be quick to mention that the hegemon does not prevent conflict in the world because it's morally superior to other countries. No, actually the hegemon often acts in very self-serving, selfish ways. But it prevents conflict in the world because it is in the hegemon's own national interest to do so. Because the hegemon is the most powerful country in the world, it often benefits, or always benefits, from the current international system. So it wants to maintain this system, and it doesn't want to see this system devolve into chaos. So that's why it tries to prevent conflicts and crises from breaking out, because this is in the hegemon's own national interest. So it's not because it's more morally superior to other countries. And since World War II, so since 1945, the end of World War II, the United States of America has been the world's hegemon, the hegemonic power in the world. It has been far more powerful economically, politically, and militarily than any other country, which is why sometimes HST scholars, they call the United States in the post-war world the policeman of the world. So basically, this is an image that might be useful to understand the role of the hegemon. So just like a policeman tries to ensure security and stability in the neighborhood, the hegemon tries to ensure stability in the world, again, because this is in the interest of the hegemon. So according to HST, the American policeman has created relative stability in the world since 1945. But can we really say that the United States is creating stability in the world today? No, I don't think we can. Because as you can see from the actions of the current president in the United States, Donald Trump, often the United States will act in ways that seems to create more chaos than stability. Just think about the current trade war that Trump has launched against the whole world and which has thrown the global economy into turmoil. So it's not easy today to say that the United States is creating stability. On the contrary, it seems like it's contributing to much of the chaos that we're seeing. And why is that? Well, HST scholars are arguing that American power is in decline. And this decline started even before Donald Trump came to power. So it's not new, but it's probably intensified under the Trump presidencies. So maybe one useful way to think about this is that the global policeman is now getting old. Is getting old and is slower and weaker. He doesn't have the same kind of respect he used to command. So his ability to prevent crime and to ensure stability is also declining. So I think American decline, relative decline at least, is quite clear if you look at the domestic situation in the United States, where you see extreme political polarization between those who support liberal ideas and those who support conservative ideas. Often they cannot really coexist, even though they're both Americans. You also see increasing inequality in the United States. Of course, the United States has always been very unequal society, but now inequality is on the rise. And you also see quite incompetent leadership making irresponsible decisions. So I think American decline is pretty clear to everyone. You can see it whenever you look at the news. So this means that the United States is unable to prevent international crises in the same way it used to when its influence was bigger. And when the American hegemon is declining and no other country can replace it, because China is still not strong enough to serve as the global hegemon. Well, in that kind of situation, the world will become more chaotic and conflict will become more likely. So that's the main argument of the hegemonic stability theory. So now I just want to give you one example of what this American decline, power decline, looks like. So here's one example. Back in 1982, Israel bombed Lebanon because they wanted to kill some Palestinian rebels who were hiding in that country. However, these attacks by Israel also killed many innocent Lebanese civilians. And this was broadcast on TV all across the world. So Ronald Reagan, who you can see in the top picture here, and who was the US president at the time, he watched these pictures from Lebanon and he saw all these innocent Lebanese people getting killed by Israeli bombs, and he didn't like it. So he picked up the phone and he called the Israeli prime minister and he demanded that Israel stop the bombings. So basically he told the Israeli prime minister directly, you must stop the bombing. And 20 minutes after Reagan's phone call to the Israeli prime minister, Israel actually stopped the attacks on Lebanon. So I think that shows very well the influence that the United States had at the time and how it was able to use its power to stop and prevent conflict in other parts of the world. But compare that case to the current situation in Gaza, because there are some similarities between the 1982 bombings of Lebanon and Israel's bombing of Gaza today. Of course, the situation in Gaza is much worse. It's taken a much greater toll on the civilian population and the Palestinian infrastructure. But when the war broke out in 2023, the American president was Joe Biden, who you can see in the picture at the bottom. And he was also, at least he claimed, to be shook and upset by the civilian suffering in Gaza. So he on several occasions picked up the phone, just like Reagan had done, and called the Israeli prime minister and asked Israel to begin a ceasefire, meaning that the bombings should stop, the attacks on the civilian population should stop. So he asked for a ceasefire. However, Israel ignored Biden's requests. And they continued the bombings. In fact, they are continuing to this day, and there has been no ceasefire, no permanent ceasefire. And so President Biden was unable to get Israel to stop the attacks. And I think this shows very well the decline in American influence and the decline in its ability to stop crises and conflicts from breaking out, and its inability to stop them once they do break out. So this is just one example, but I think it shows the US's declining influence in the world. So it's not been able to prevent the wars or to stop the wars in Gaza, in Ukraine or Sudan, and now in Iran. So hegemonic stability theory argues, again, that when the hegemonic power in the world, which has been the United States until now, when that power decreases, the world will become more chaotic. And that is arguably what we're seeing today. I think this kind of research will probably increase in popularity because we are currently living through a power transition where the United States is in relative decline and China is becoming more powerful. And I think the signs of US decline is pretty clear. We see erratic decision-making. We also see the impulsive use of force. We see increased isolationism. So I think when people view this, they start wondering what will happen when the United States no longer is the most powerful country in the world, and what kind of superpower will China be? And how can we reform our international institutions so that we no longer need hegemons? So these are the kind of questions I think international relations theories can help us answer. So I think this field will only get more and more popular. So then that begs the question, in a world where the hegemon is declining, how can we maintain stability? The policeman is getting old and weak and unable to do the things that he was able to do before. So what should we do? How should we try to maintain stability in the world under these conditions? Should we perhaps make America the hegemon again? So should we support the United States so that it can regain its former power and again play the role of global hegemon? Or should we perhaps help China to become a new and hopefully more responsible hegemon? I think neither of those options are good. I think neither of those options are ideal because if we give hegemonic powers to one country, it becomes too powerful. Yes, a hegemon might be able to prevent certain crises and conflicts here and there, which of course is good. But as we've seen time and time again, a hegemon can also use its hegemonic power to serve its own interests, not the interests of world peace, not the interests of global stability, but its own national interests. So I think that it would be ideal to make an international organization, for example, like the United Nations, the new leader of the world, the new policeman of the world. Rather than having one country as our global hegemon, I think we have to find a way to give that kind of power to an international organization. For example, the United Nations, the UN. Because in the UN, of course, all countries are member states. So that means that every single country plays a little part in the decision-making process. And that means that this is a much more democratic way of obtaining and maintaining international peace and stability. So then, of course, the big question is, how can we make the UN into the policeman of the world? Now, that's a question I don't really have time to get into today. It's a very difficult question, and there's a lot of different opinions, so I won't get into that today. But if these big questions interest you, then I would just let you know that these are precisely the kind of big, important questions that we are discussing in our international relations classes here at the Faculty of Law. So if you're interested in joining that discussion, please do so together with us in the future. Yes, so thank you very much for your attention. So I have always been interested in how powerful countries behave on the international stage, and I've been struck by the discrepancy, the big gap between their words and their actions. So powerful countries, they often claim to defend things like human rights and the rule of law and democracy. But if you look at their actions, you will notice that they often violate international law and international norms. So this kind of discrepancy between principled words and selfish action that you can see among powerful countries has always interested me, and this is something that international relations really puts a big focus on. So I think international relations theory helps us see through the hypocrisy and helps us discover the extent to which the world is actually ruled by power and self-interest. And of course, my hope is that we can find alternative ways of governance that do not rely on power and do not only benefit the powerful countries.